So we got an emergency call last Friday night. The customer indicated that there was water on the floor. These are hardwood floors. So I got out there right away and found that the source of the water was a leak or seepage coming out of the bulkhead on the underside of the internal overflow. I wasn't able to tighten it that night because it's a pretty confined or restricted area to try to reach into. And so what I've done is brought my 100-gallon container today, and essentially what I'm going to do is drain 95% of the water out of the tank. I'll pull the decorative corals out as well. I can then move the entire tank stand and canopy myself. At least I'm hoping to. And with that said, I'll then be able to reach in there and either with my hand from the backside or more freely with a hammer and a straight edge screwdriver, tap that collar, threaded collar on the bulkhead back so that it's tight. So let's go see if we can solve this leak and move this big tank.
And we've arrived back at the hexagon tank with the leaking bulkhead. The towels are gone, and it looks like the water on the floor is dried up as well. As a temporary fix to the leak, I've wrapped a towel around the bulkhead. This does not stop the leak, but it does soak up the drips from the leaking bulkhead. Or at the least, contain that leaking water to the top of the wet-dry trickle filter. So with the water pooling on top of the filter, it's time to address the source of the problem. And that starts with removing the aquarium's wooden canopy and pulling the coral decorations from the inside of the tank. And this starts with placing the clean corals off to the side so I can use the empty box for the dirty, wet corals. Once the decorations are out of the tank, and before I drain the water, I'm going to wipe away as much of the algae on the inside of the tank as I can. It's easier now as it's still wet. This being a 30-inch deep tank, I need to use the pad on a long stick to reach down to the bottom of the tank. Knowing this is an acrylic tank, I do have to be aware that it can scratch. And as I approach the gravel line, this becomes a greater risk that I could pick up a granule or stone from the gravel and into the brush. Care and observation are my best preventatives, but just making it a point to pay attention is my best bet. So now with the tank empty of its decorations and the interior wiped clean of algae, it's time to remove the water. That's about 75 gallons worth of water. Where and how are we going to accomplish this? Well, a good fish guy comes prepared.
So we brought our large 100-gallon container along with us today, and what we're going to do is pump the water from the tank inside the house out here to the 100-gallon container. This way we can conveniently pump it back, except for about 10 gallons, which is what we'll use to do a water change with. So let me get my sump pump and the garden hose, and let's go ahead and empty 95% of that aquarium.
Do you have an aquarium question? Are you looking for aquatic answers? Just key in wetwebmedia.com. Wet Media has information on freshwater, marine, brackish, and planted aquariums. Wet Media is staffed by the capable Wet Media crew. Check today's facts, ask questions, or search keywords. That's wetwebmedia.com.
Hi there, my name's Jim Stein and you know me as the LA Fish Guy. Well, I also wear a couple of other hats. One of them is the jellyfish tank called the Jelly Aquarium, and the third is myfishtank.com. I offer an entire line of acrylic aquariums ranging from rectangular to hexagon, flatback hex, as well as the custom curve front aquariums. There's also an entire line of stands and canopies ranging from MDF to pine to oak with a variety of different finishes available. And the website is even smart enough that you can calculate what the freight and crate charges to your location will be. That's myfishtank.com.
Reef Hobbyist magazine believes that our hobby, our fellow hobbyists, and the animals in our care are best served by the free distribution of quality information. Reef Hobbyist magazine provides hobbyists with critical husbandry information with an emphasis on marine ornamental breeding efforts. Reef Hobbyist magazine is available for free in local fish stores across the country, or you can subscribe at www.reefhobbyistmagazine.com. Our plan today is to tighten a leaking bulkhead on the underside of this big hexagon aquarium. To be able to reach the bulkhead, I'm going to need to be able to move the tank away from the wall. To do so, I need to lessen the weight of the entire aquarium system, and that involves removing the water from the tank. To do so, I'm going to pump the water out and into a big container outside in the van. And to lighten the weight of the entire aquarium system, I'm going to pump the wet-dry trickle filter empty of as much water as possible. And even though it's only another 5 gallons, that's still another 40 pounds that I don't have to try to slide across the floor when I push the aquarium system away from the wall. And thanks to my capable 1,200 gallon an hour sump pump, it's no time before the tank is almost empty and the evacuated water is conveniently stored off to the side in a 100 gallon container outside in my van. With the fish beginning to feel awkward with the low water level, I've reached the point where I've removed as much water as I can without causing issues with the fish that are still in the tank. The question now is, can I slide the aquarium system away from the wall? And with ease, the system slides over and away. But is it away far enough for me to reach in and address the leaking bulkhead? But first, it looks like a bit more of the cleanup of that salt creep is necessary.
So you can see here the pre-filter assembly as well as the return line, which rises up inside that internal overflow. And it would be this bulkhead here, right there, that's got the little drip in it. So we're going to remove this towel that seems to have now soaked up some moisture, which in turn has landed on top of the wet dry trickle filter. We'll go ahead and take this off. And what we want to do is get up there to that bulkhead up inside there and tighten it. So you can see here there's a little notch in the nut, the threaded nut, that tightens onto the bulkhead. What we need to do is get our screwdriver, straight edge screwdriver in there, and with a hammer tap that to tighten it. That's how I did it last time, and other than it recently starting to leak, it's worked well for the last 8 or 9 years. So what I'm going to do is take my straight edge screwdriver and get that straight edge in that little notch up on the nut around that bulkhead. Then I'm going to use the hammer to tighten it a little bit.
So the hammer, screwdriver, and notched bulkhead collar are the results of really not having enough room to use a proper wrench. But the reality is, there's no more room to work, so tapping the bulkhead's threaded collar is my next best no space option that I can come up with. This still does not mean it's any easier to work in such a confined space. So be sure to come on back for part 3 to see how successful I am at tightening the leaking bulkhead so I can stop water on the floor.